Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How y'all doing?
Good.
So I was really hoping for some smoke machine, laser lights, some sort of entertainment fanfare next time.
Yeah, next time, bring it. We'll tell you where.
I will bring my fog machine and appear out of nowhere. So my name is Jason, and I'm a co-founder of HelloSugoi, and we are building a decentralized event management ecosystem. We leverage the Ethereum blockchain to allocate tickets, to incentivize economic behavior, and to finance events. Right now, we're focusing on the event ticket sales aspect of our business. Roughly 2 months ago, we became what we believe to be the first company in the world to leverage Ethereum to sell a ticket to the State of Digital Money, which was hosted by Cross Campus and Alan, who was up here earlier talking about Cross Campus. He's right there. What's up? Which is really exciting for us in terms of breaking new ground and exploring this really interesting blockchain technology. There are so many things I want to talk about today. I only have about 20-25 minutes. We'll likely get to all of them. As the title behind me says, we'll be talking about the new internet infrastructure powered by this blockchain technology. Before we get too deep into the blockchain space, I want to get an idea of who I'm talking to here. So who's heard of blockchain technology? All right, it is such a buzzword, right? Okay, so who has heard of Bitcoin? How about Ethereum? Raise them high. Okay, who owns a cryptocurrency? Okay, so now the real people are coming through. Who here knows the algorithm that the miners run to validate transactions? All right. Okay, so this will give you an idea of how technical to get. Because blockchain is not an intuitive technology. As a matter of fact, I get asked this question all the time. Well, explain what you do. What is blockchain? Last night I did a podcast called On Repeat. And the moderator asked me, if you were to describe blockchain to a 5-year-old, what would you say? And I think I said something like, well, it's a disintermediated trust layer that leverages decentralized blockchain nodes to validate transactions on an open worldwide network computer, blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me, he's like, dude, to a 5-year-old. And I think I lost him at disintermediation, all these big buzzwords. And I was walking home last night after the podcast, kind of ruminating about the experience. I'm trying to answer that question. And I don't think it's a fair question, actually. Answering that is kind of like asking a caveman or trying to explain a car to a caveman. Like, how would you do that, right? Well, if you were to go back in time and bring a car with you, there are no roads. They're going to look at this car and you're going to say, oh yeah, it's a way to get around. It's a mode of transportation. The caveman's going to look at that and be like, well, there's no roads, so why would I even use this car? This doesn't make any sense. There's no precedent set. I just hop on an elephant or something or walk around, use my legs to get around. Why would I need this car? And the difficulty in describing this technology is that there's no precedent set for it. There's very little that's happened before to draw reference to explain blockchain in a very simple kind of way. You can say, well, it's a shared record-keeping system. And that kind of explains what it is, but it's so much more than that. So I'm hoping today to kind of open up the hood and peer into the inner workings of this technology and why I'm so excited about it, and why so many other people are excited about it and are planning it to be the airplane of the 21st century. I do believe that it's likely the most interesting and forward-thinking technology of the past 100 years. I think we're going to look back at the internet today in 10 years' time and think of it as being not much more advanced than the fax machine compared to what blockchain offers. Blockchain is a shared record-keeping system. It is a way to keep track of transactions that happen over the internet or on these networks. The first blockchain is the famous Bitcoin, which was a way for money to be exchanged over the internet without any central authority. In particular, no banks are required to keep track of the transactions. The transactions are managed by a series of computers that run the SHA-256 algorithm to validate transactions. And the people who maintain these nodes are incentivized to do so by earning new tokens, new coins, or minting new bitcoins through a process called crypto economics. Bitcoin came about in 2009. It was released as an open source software by a man-woman entity called Satoshi Nakamoto in response to the financial crisis of 2008. Let's fast forward several years. About 2 years ago, this new blockchain came about called Ethereum, which is what we leverage to create our decentralized event ticketing platform. And Ethereum is kind of like Bitcoin 2.0 in that it comes with a Turing-complete language called Solidity, which allows entrepreneurs and developers like myself and my co-founder Angelo, who's over there. Hey, Angelo. To create decentralized applications that leverage this distributed ledger technology. I think about value a lot. And what Ethereum allows, or what blockchain allows, is a redefinition, a way to define value systems. Not just one-dimensional money systems, but how do we create and measure and incentivize behavior through these technologies. So, last week I went to a very special event in a desert far away called Burning Man. And I'm still collecting my mind from that experience, so please pardon any abstractions that I may be speaking in. Among other things, what was really interesting about this experience was that for a week, 70,000 people gather in this dust bowl, and there's no money. It's not even a barter system, it's a gifting culture. And that, to me, being someone that thinks about money or thinks about value on a day-to-day basis, it was very fascinating to witness and experience what a world could be like without money. And blockchain technologies, well, that hit home to me because blockchain allows for this new invention of value systems. Money is so one-dimensional. It's an abstraction that's assigned by a couple of guys in a room at a private corporation, and we trade away our time and non-renewable resource chasing this money. Now we have a system to reinvent money as a technology, and for the first time in human history have an answer to reinvent value systems and reinvent the internet infrastructure. And we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit today. So, back in '93, the internet promised us a couple of things. It promised us access to information and democratization of the economy. Now, I think we can all agree it's done one of those things really well. The other, not so much. Let me gather my thoughts here. The internet's a walled garden. As cyberpunk author Bruce Sterling said, the internet, it's not fair to talk about the internet without mentioning the companies that essentially own it. Facebook, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Apple. They have created this, as a result of network effects, they've created this walled garden. And all of the data, all of your transactions, your interactions are stored away in these siloed private databases to which we do not have the keys. And the internet isn't this open ecosystem, economic forum where you can just post a storefront and sell items to whoever you want in the world. Basically, that information is hosted on like an AWS server or something like that. And so it's this closed system. Although we have access to information, the value that we provide and create for these networks is locked away, and we are the product. So let's use Facebook for example. Facebook knows more about humanity than any government or corporation in human history. And data is oil. Data is so very much important to learning about human behavior, and all of these really interesting correlations and knowledge can be gained from the study of this data that's collected. But we don't have access to that. That's locked away. A couple of guys in the room, Mark Zuckerberg really, has access to that data and sells us back targeted advertising. And they profit off of the value that we provide the network. We are the product of the network. Now, where blockchain comes in terms of creating a new internet infrastructure, is to allow the ability for a decentralized social network. So imagine a Facebook where you get paid directly by the advertisers, where you have an account through, let's say, Uport or Civic, where you have a persistent self-sovereign web identity, not a separate Twitter account, not a separate Facebook account, but a system where you control the data that you output to the network and earn tokens based upon what you're willing to share. This decentralized Facebook wouldn't have a corporation sitting in between the transactions, taking a cut of your data, learning about you. You would allow the network to learn about you and would earn value as a result of that, which to me is a very fascinating concept and something that the internet promised us that I think we lost along the way due to network effects. And network effects in a closed server-client relationship, which is what the internet is now, when a critical mass of people start using a particular network like Facebook, it makes it very difficult for smaller companies to create competition. And either they will swallow you up and you cannot create a competition to Facebook, which doesn't really fall in alignment with an open, economic, democratic ecosystem. So let's talk a little bit more maybe about how blockchain is able to create these value systems through what's called a token. So I'm sure many of you here have heard of initial coin offerings, ICOs, or token generation events. Who here has heard of an ICO? So it's this really new way of crowdsourcing where you do not need to be an accredited investor to participate in fundraising for a particular decentralized application. And companies will accept Ether to fund their project. So let's use my company, for example, HelloSugoi, and to explain what a token is and how that relates to the internet of value. So imagine as a decentralized application, I'm creating a chessboard, and I'm essentially selling the chess pieces to play that game. You could even consider a casino as an analogy. You trade your fiat currency for poker chips. Those poker chips or chips allow you to play all the games on the casino floor. If you were to try to take a Luxor token or poker chip to Starbucks and buy a coffee with it, well, they'd look at you like, well, this isn't real money. It has value within the casino, but outside of the casino, it doesn't have any value. So decentralized applications leveraging Ethereum have created these tokens that have value on the network, on the game board that's being developed, that incentivize behavior through economic forces. So take, for example, our company where we're trying to reduce ticket fees and allow event organizers to list more tickets on the primary market sale, therefore driving down the price in the secondary market sale. And we've created a token that incentivizes this kind of behavior. And a token is much more than a one-dimensional transfer of money. It is a multifaceted utility, programmable utility, that can create kinds of behaviors on this game system, right? On this chessboard, on this checkers board, so to speak. And what's so fascinating is that with blockchain, you can measure all kinds of different interactions. and incentivize those actions through the earning of more tokens that can then be traded for goods and services. So in the future, we're working on some technologies that tie biometrics to measure the output of, let's say, certain chemicals in the body. Now this relates back to the experiences that I learned at Burning Man, where there's just so much love and compassion there. Humans are biologically rewarded to do good for other people. And now we have a technology that is able to measure that and reward and incentivize that good behavior through earning more tokens. So let's see, in the future, you swallow a pill that measures output of oxytocin, which is this chemical in the brain that's released, in the body that's released after you've done something compassionate for somebody else. When you give a gift to somebody, it feels really good to do that. We're actually biologically programmed to do good for other people. Our current society looks down upon that, or doesn't express it in the kind of way, because we don't have the technology to enable that. So with this biometric pill that you swallow that measures the output of oxytocin as you're doing good deeds, that could be tokenized, where you could actually earn money for doing good to others that could then be traded for goods and services to pay your bills, to pay your electricity, to buy food. And that is a brand new concept. It seems like a very abstract concept, but so isn't value. What gives a dollar a value? Well, we all just believe that the dollar will be worth the same thing tomorrow as it is today. It's an abstraction of reality. It's this grand hallucination that we're all living, where we assign a value to these germ-ridden pieces of cotton printed with green ink, as stated by Anton Antonopoulos. He was a very fascinating orator, and I highly recommend that you check out some of his talks as well. So this new internet infrastructure enables anyone to participate in the network. It is owned by every person who participates on this network in an open, transparent, immutable way. It is the internet that was promised to us, the internet that we want to build for the future, an internet that's not owned by major corporations, an internet of value. In the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to leave the age of science fiction and enter the age of science reality. We are going to leave or keep the internet of information and enter the age of the internet of value, where decentralized applications will create these value systems, these tokenized value systems, to incentivize particular behavior. And like I said, in the case of our company, it's to incentivize event organizers to sell tickets at a fair price to the people who want to attend those events. In the future, it could be tied to good behavior. It could be tied to the opening of human consciousness. Now these sound like really crazy abstract concepts, but we actually have the technology now to be able to build these types of applications. Now, why is this a social movement disguised as technology? Because now we have a tech that can align with this more spiritual offline thinking and create a technology that can align those value systems on the internet. And that's the direction that we're heading, and that's where we're going to see the future going, where we all participate in the economy, where the 75% of the people on this planet that do not have access to financial services, a bank account, and access to capital, will now be able to participate, create their own tokens, create their own value systems, trade amongst themselves in ways that right now just simply doesn't exist. There are 6 billion cell phones on the planet. 3 billion of those people do not have access to clean drinking water. So that is to assume that there's more cell phones, or the availability of cell phones is more abundant than clean drinking water on this planet. And that's all that you need to participate within this new economy, this new value system, this new way of defining the abstraction of value. Now, I'm not okay with some company saying, well, your dollar is worth this. I believe, and I know a number of those who are advocates for blockchain technology believe, that this abstraction should be assigned by the users, by the community. Community is so inherent to ourselves as human beings. It is so important. I witnessed that on the playa with dust covered in my hair, losing my mind, just so amazingly taken aback by all the love and connectedness of gifting and giving to other human beings. It's how we are meant to live. It's what we are meant to be. We want to do good to one another. We want to create community with one another. We want to relate to one another. We are social beings. And in this new internet that promises to connect us with people all over the world, well, now we have a way to do so where we define those terms. And we can include everyone in this. I'm a huge advocate for this technology, obviously. I think it is, as I said earlier, one of the most important inventions of the 21st century, and we are in a very rare opportunity right now to reinvent value, to reinvent this internet, and to reinvent a world where we can help solve a lot of the problems, scarcity particularly, by creating these new interesting value systems and inventing the technology of money, reinventing what that means, reinventing community, reinventing interconnectivity, reinventing the internet.
Jason, that was amazing and inspiring. I was actually just talking to Cameron in the back, who's a member here. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the need for a merit-based economy, because essentially universal basic income is likely a probability at some point in the future as automation starts displacing jobs. Yeah. And this could be a really novel solution to earning income by doing good for other people. So I think it's really exciting. So we're going to open up to Q&A now. If you guys have a question, raise your hand. If the things that are coming out of your mouth do not end in a question mark, save it for later. Okay? So storytelling and dumping and all that good stuff afterwards. Jason will be hanging out with us for a little bit, so that's good. In any case, John's walking around with the mic. Raise your hand.
First of all, thank you very much for today's presentation. I know 25 minutes to talk about both the new internet and also blockchain technology. It's kind of an impossible task, and you did a great job just of talking about different areas of this. So my question is that currently, as you said, a lot of people are earning tokens by helping the blockchain technology move forward, but I've heard that there's actually new technology coming out within both Ethereum and also Bitcoin, but other currencies that are going to automate that process and actually remove the people who are creating code to earn tokens. So I'm wondering if you can talk about that in terms of sort of equalizing income for people who may not typically participate in this new internet economy.
Really, really interesting question. What Ethereum and other blockchains that have programmable languages built on top of them can do is to create digital autonomous smart contracts that self-execute without any human intervention. Which is crazy when you think about it. And with these initial coin offerings, it's kind of backwards to the typical startup, whereby companies are raising tremendous amounts of capital, writing the code, holding their tokens, and letting the code kind of do its thing, sit on the blockchain and self-automate. Did that kind of... Can you rephrase your question again? Or?
Sure. So are you saying that will replace people who are creating... Sorry, are you saying that will replace the coders who are actually working to earn those tokens? Or will you have a mixed economy of this automation and the coders as well?
Well, you're going to need someone to maintain the code base. A lot of the systems that the smart contracts enable developers to create these autonomous systems, these autonomous applications that may need some amount of human intervention to keep up to date, to run. Eventually, we would like to create a decentralized ticketing platform where we can just kind of walk away and the code operates on its own with some sort of combination of artificial intelligence that automates those tasks. So yeah, I think the idea is where now you can create a decentralized application, you can raise the amount of capital needed to write the code, And then maintenance is theoretically pretty simple. And how does the company make money? Well, they hold their token, and presumably the token will earn value over time. And that value can then be traded for other tokens and so on and so forth. But yes, eventually the idea with Ethereum and other programmable blockchains is that there's no need for human beings to run the code, which is really, really cool and exciting and what we're trying to do. In the back.
Not Jason, okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm wondering specifically, as an example, how would blockchain fix the problem of all those horrible ticket agencies that buy all our tickets? I mean, how could it fix a problem like that?
Well, I could probably talk about this for several hours. It's a nuanced problem. I guess on the highest level, we can provide transparency to the event ticketing space. Right now, the problem is that so much of the inventory is withheld in the primary market sale, and we don't know about that. We don't know who the promoters and event organizers are giving those tickets to, but a lot of them are withheld because there's a price discovery problem. Because event organizers, due to all sorts of economic factors, namely supply and demand, don't know how to price their ticket in the primary market. So they withhold them from the primary market sale and allow brokers and scalpers to mitigate the risk. And the secondary market will essentially determine what people are willing to pay for that ticket. The blockchain provides a level of transparency whereby customers then have more information regarding the tickets available, the price of the ticket that other people are paying. And in addition to that, it eliminates fraud. And that's a huge issue for a number of ticketing platforms. Fake tickets, fake PDF tickets that you show up at the door are double spent and you cannot get in. The short answer is allowing and enabling an amount of transparency unprecedented. The blockchain is available, the record-keeping system is available to everybody on the network so that thereby everyone can see the amount of money being paid for the tickets, who's buying those tickets, how many are left in the inventory, and therefore we can make more educated decisions about how to buy and aren't stressing it the day that the Drake tickets go on sale and we have 5 browser windows open. We're all trying to get those 2 tickets for us or our girlfriend or something like that. So blockchain is a really magic silver bullet technology that will enable this increased visibility for how the nuanced economics of the primary and secondary markets work. And I think will really help to inform the customers and the event organizers into the economic behaviors of the whole ecosystem.
Back here.
Hi.
I really love the future that you're talking about, and I'm kind of a realist and a cynic and an optimist all wrapped into one.
Me too.
And so on one hand, when we were talking about the universal basic income and and then you're talking about the idea that you would have your own sort of sovereign internet presence and you can willingly sell information about yourself. So on one hand, I balance that. This sounds hopelessly idealistic and utopian, but on the other hand, you're talking about universal basic income and things like that. I was thinking, like, the world isn't going to work unless we go to something like that. That's what I believe. So, like, there almost is no option besides this utopian version. Another area that I see is we're talking about identity theft. Yeah, identity theft. And particularly, this morning's news about Experian. Does blockchain and identity being a part of that, does that make it more or less easy to have your identity stolen and out in the world among 7 billion people? Or does it make it actually safer?
Safer, absolutely. The blockchain has never been hacked. The points of entry to the blockchain have been compromised, but the actual record-keeping system itself would be tremendously difficult to thwart due to how much money it would cost to change the record. Right now, the Bitcoin network uses about the same amount of electricity in a day that the country of Ireland uses. So in order to thwart the network, you would need to have a supercomputer that could harness half the power of Ireland every single day, which is nearly impossible. So a self-sovereign identity management system, a persistent identity across all of your internet accounts, is something that's incredibly fascinating and one of the early projects that people are using Ethereum for. I think security is inherent to the blockchain in that you have a public and private key that are inextricably linked, and right now there are some other companies working on managing the private and public keys, because if you lose those, you're kind of out of luck in terms of accessing your money or your identity. So that's certainly an issue that a number of engineers are working on right now. I would say that it's much more secure than right now. The internet doesn't know if you're a cat or a dog or a robot, and having a system that could link you to a encrypted hash, alphanumeric, 26 alphanumeric character code on the blockchain would help to prevent any security breaches in terms of your identity. Yes?
Yes, June Davidson. I have created women leadership development programs, and I want to know if we can bypass. I have a sponsorship package for the corporate. I do not want the women to pay for this. This is big time. So can you create the tokens so we can close that platform and make it happen faster and you get the money from corporate? I have sponsorship packages. So can you change this into tokens?
Well, that's a hot topic. I think people are trying to tokenize everything these days because they see all of this money coming into this new ecosystem and companies raising many millions of dollars in a matter of seconds. That's going to change as the regulation catches up with these crowdsourcing systems and kind of allows for a more amount of security and a further due diligence and vetting process for these companies. We're in the Wild West right now, and there are many more questions than there are answers. I don't know too much about more than what you said regarding tokenizing your idea. I think the thought that you need to have for what you're trying to do is, does my token have a utility? Does it have a purpose in relation to this game board that you're creating that is not selling a security, which is the future promise of return on your investment, but is a utility that has a specific use that can only be used in that casino scenario, right? So just when you're thinking about your idea, compare it to that casino analogy I used earlier, right?
Over here.
So a question would be, you're starting to touch on it, the legality of ICOs. Recently, some articles, I think it's now forbidden in China, and I think Canada came out yesterday saying, it's forbidden in Canada. So can you speak a little bit to that in terms of actually doing an ICO and the legality?
Yeah, well, I'm not an attorney, so I can't speak to you about the more nuanced legalities. To avoid punishment by the SEC, you need to create a token that is a multifaceted utility, that is not a currency, and that is not selling the future promise of a return on investment. Otherwise, you need to register with the SEC and become highly regulated. And it's a very fine line, like what defines what is a utility. I think there's a lot of gray area and not much precedent has been set. I think what's going to happen is that some people are going to get hurt and they're going to complain, and somebody is going to go to jail and be punished for that and be made an example. Again, this is very early stage. I think not more than 6 months ago, if you were to say, hey, have you ever heard of an ICO, maybe 2 or 3 people would raise their hand. And now it's such a hot topic right now. And as more visibility, more money is raised, and as more people get involved in structuring these token releases, there'll be more of a legal precedent set But I think at some point someone's going to be made an example of. It hasn't happened yet, but it certainly will.
One last question. Yes.
You mentioned disintermediation of the corporations so they can stop taking a cut from the value we're creating. Question is, what are you and how do you make money?
Through our token. Okay? In specific to event ticketing, our business model is not that much different than your traditional Ticketmaster, for example. We will take a very small transaction fee on every ticket sold in both the primary and secondary markets. We can also provide a deeper, more robust analytics and data collection, which we can monetize in kind of a SaaS model depending upon what metrics you want as an event organizer to better finance your events in the future. We, as a company, will also hold a substantial amount or lock in a substantial amount of the tokens that we are looking to release, which is the fuel of our event management ecosystem. As more event organizers use this token to issue tickets to events, and as more customers are purchasing tickets with this token, that will presumably raise the price over time. And of course, by having a substantial amount locked up, as that increases in value, we then have more money to help fund future projects and keep the company afloat. And that's kind of this new decentralized model whereby we create the code, we release the code, it sits in the blockchain, it automates itself, and we hold an amount of tokens that raise in value over time. So that is technically how we would make money. Of course, through events and ticket sales, eventually we will become a profitable company, just like a Ticketmaster or Eventbrite or Ticketfly. But over time, the differentiation is this token that helps to fuel the ecosystem. And supply and demand, more people using it, raises in price, and then we can kind of walk away and use that capital to start new decentralized activities.